This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream. Sign up now and get our streaming service Nebula absolutely free, where you can get exclusive TLDR videos and an extended version of our new show, The Daily Briefing. Putin's ongoing invasion of Ukraine has invited widespread criticism from most of the world. In fact, in early March, 141 countries voted in favour of a motion condemning the invasion, and just 5 countries, Russia, Belarus, North Korea, Eritrea and Syria, voted against the motion. A notable absentee in that vote, though, was India, who have so far been remarkably restrained in their criticism of Russia. So in this video, we thought we'd take a look at India's position on the Ukraine crisis, and why it's irked some Western politicians. We're going to split this video into 3 parts. Firstly, we're going to try our best to explain what India, or at least the current Indian government, actually thinks of the Ukraine crisis. Secondly, we're going to explain why they've taken the stance they have. And thirdly, we're going to ask how this might change in the future. But let's start with that first part, what India actually thinks about the Ukraine crisis. Some Western commentators and politicians have accused India of being essentially pro-Russia. And to be fair to them, there is some evidence for this. As we just mentioned, India have been conspicuously reluctant to criticise Putin, and Russian diplomats have enjoyed preferential treatment in New Delhi. On April 1st, Modi, India's Prime Minister, granted an audience to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, an opportunity that he'd pointedly denied any other foreign ministers, including China's Wang Yi. India has also taken the opportunity to buy Russia's oil on the cheap, with India's Russian oil exports up 500% since the start of the invasion. Nonetheless, this probably isn't a fair characterization of India's position, which isn't so much pro-Russia as it's just not anti-Russia. Modi's preferential treatment of Lavrov can be explained by the fact that India has positioned itself as a possible mediator in any peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and India's oil purchases can be explained by simple self-interest. As a net oil importer in a climate of high energy prices, India needs to get cheap oil wherever it can find it. So if India's decided on this neutral position, why has India decided to take the middle ground? Well, as we see it, there are sort of 4 reasons. Firstly, India has a long history of neutrality. When the Soviet Union invaded Hungary in 1956, or Czechoslovakia in 1968, or Afghanistan in 1979, or even when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, India refused to condemn the aggressor, preferring instead to maintain its interests with both sides. And this strategy has suited India's interests pretty well over the long term. India has been able to maintain relatively good relations with Russia, who supply the country with most of their military equipment, while also maintaining a relationship with the West, who include India in various Asia-Pacific alliances, most notably the Quad. The second reason for their neutrality is that the country had what was described as a special and privileged strategic partnership with Russia pre-invasion. As we just mentioned, Russia supplies India with most of its military equipment, and it's estimated that between 70 and 80% of India's military equipment are of Russian origin. And even if India is less reliant on Russian and Soviet tech than it once was, Russia remains a key supplier of new weapons and a vital source of maintenance and spares. Russia also supports India's claims over Kashmir, which is one of the reasons why India abstained on all Ukraine-related votes in the UN. India will also want to keep Russia on side to avoid encouraging the creation of an anti-India China-Russia alliance, which would make life more than a bit difficult for them. The third reason for not taking sides is that it's just in India's immediate self-interest. As we mentioned earlier, India is a big oil importer. Petroleum products made up more than a quarter of the country's overall spending imports last year, the most of any large economy. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has contributed to higher energy prices globally, and India's stated neutrality allows it to insulate itself against these price rises by buying Russian oil on the cheap. Since the invasion started, India's bought some 13 million barrels of Russian oil, nearly as many as the 16 million that it imported throughout the entirety of 2021. In fact, Russia and India were even exploring a rupee-based system for oil payments, which are usually denominated in dollars. While this has upset some Western politicians, Indian politicians argue that it's hypocritical for the West to criticize India, while Europe is still buying hundreds of millions of euros worth of Russian energy every single day. Fourthly, putting India's self-interest first plays out well for Modi's domestic political base. Modi's BJP have adopted a sort of India-first Hindu nationalism, and they believe that by resisting the West's coercive diplomacy, while simultaneously poking fun at the West's apparent hypocrisy, makes India look like an independent superpower, which delights the BJP base. So you get the idea. In keeping with tradition, India is doing its best to maintain neutrality over the Ukraine crisis. And this policy of neutrality at least coincides with some of India's national interests. And so far this has worked well. India has remained relatively well insulated from the inflation that's affecting its neighbours. And it will be good for India's international standing if it does end up mediating between Russia and Ukraine. So, if things are looking good for India in the middle ground, why do some people expect this to change soon? Well, some hopeful Western commentators claim that India is shifting westwards, and there is some evidence to back this up. After all, they issued a joint statement with Japan in late March, expressing concerns for the humanitarian situation in Ukraine and highlighting issues they have with territorial integrity, with this report actually being conspicuously critical of Putin. More than that, the war crimes which are emerging in Ukraine have made it harder for India to maintain their both sidesism. Indian news outlets have covered these crimes extensively, which heaps pressure on the government to do more. And India's permanent representative to the United Nations told the Security Council that India, quote, unequivocally condemns these killings. Nonetheless, while there might have been a slight shift in rhetoric, this doesn't mean that India and the West are on the same page. Neither the joint statement nor India's statement to the UN explicitly mentioned Russia or Putin, and India has made it clear that they'll continue to trade with Russia. Western diplomatic efforts have ultimately failed because Modi reckons that as much as India needs the West to counter China in the Asia-Pacific, the West, and especially the US, needs India just as much for the exact same reason. If India's position does change then, it will probably be motivated by changes in India's national interests, rather than any grand unity with the West. If you want to be updated on this story as it plays out, then you should subscribe to the Daily Briefing, our show where we break down the 5 stories you need to know about each day in just 5 minutes. Kind of like your daily news vitamins to get you in the know quickly. Now, if you're interested, then you can watch it on the Daily Briefing YouTube channel, or you can listen by searching in your favourite podcast app. But if you want the extended version of the show, that's an extra 10 minutes every single day and an ad-free experience, then you'll want to sign up to our streaming service Nebula. There you'll also find all kinds of exclusive TLDR videos which will never make it to YouTube, and all of our latest videos ad-free. And if you're interested, then I've got good news, because we partnered with CuriosityStream, the home of the best documentaries online. Thanks to them, you can get both streaming services. That's CuriosityStream for all the docs you could want, and Nebula for bonus TLDR for less than $15 a year. That's a wild deal, and a 26% discount on their already low price. So get yourself a ton of documentaries and exclusive content from your favorite creators, including the Daily Briefing Extended Edition, by signing up using the link below. Thanks for your support.